What we're going to be looking at today is a heated exchange between President Trump and Zelensky in the White House. Let's just jump right in.
Problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine? Did you say what problems we have?
I have been to...
There's a lot of body language already going on, so I'm going to point all of this out, then we're going to keep going. If you first look at President Trump and Vice President Vance, they're both leaning forward. This is what we do when we want to be persuasive. This is what we do when we want to connect with somebody. It doesn't always mean that you're connecting positively, but it means you're connecting. Now, if you look at Zelensky, he's leaning back, his arms are crossed. Obviously, this is a defensive posture. I think anybody can recognize that. He's also leaned back a little bit more. He is not leaning in the same as President Trump and Vice President Vance, which means that he's probably feeling defensive. And not surprisingly, we're going to see why as we keep going.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree?
Now, this was interesting. I want you to watch Zelensky's face during this exchange right here.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens.
So when Vice President Vance says, I've watched and seen the stories, you can see Zelensky raising his eyebrows, then shaking his head. We raise our eyebrows to bring attention to our face, and then he shakes his head. He wants you to see that he disapproves of what's being said.
Is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree?
When Vice President Vance said propaganda tour, that got his attention. So if you'll notice how quickly his eyes moved, Vice President Vance, that's because there would have been a surge of adrenaline, that all of a sudden there was an immediate draw of his attention. So when he said that, you get a very visceral reaction from Zelensky. You can also see his eyebrows right here. Let's go back and see what he does with that.
Is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree?
So when he said propaganda tour, you see the eyebrows come together. That's anger. That really made him angry.
Agree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent?
Now you'll see right now President Trump has his hands in a steepling position. We typically do this when we are an expert at something or when we have a position of power. Obviously, this is a place where he is showing that he is in a position of power in this room right now. And the body language shows that too, outside of just the steepling. If you look, as I pointed out, Vice President Vance and President Trump are both leaning forward. Zelensky continues to hold his arms tightly. And so it must be that it's so visceral that he's feeling defensive right now that he's keeping his arms closed. Because I think most people would recognize that that's not a way that you want to appear in a situation like this. But the body behaves unconsciously, so he must be feeling so defensive right now that he can't help but keep his arms crossed.
The destruction of your country.
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future.
So I've talked about the eyebrows raising before. Right now he's saying, you have a nice ocean, but you're going to feel it in the future. As he's trying to get everybody to pay attention to what he's saying, he wants you to focus on his face because the point he's making he believes is very important.
Nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're...
And you'll also notice that once President Trump starts to speak, you're seeing Zelensky shake his head no again. This must show that what he's feeling, that he wants to disagree. This is a very combative situation.
God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
It's very subtle, but you can see him shaking his head right there.
God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve...
So, as President Trump is saying, don't tell us what we're going to feel. You see his body open up, and he's also in Zelensky's space a bit. And that's, once again, a position of power. It's showing, I can take up whatever space I so choose, so don't tell me how we feel or how we're going to feel.
God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what...
See, if you're reaching over to touch somebody in a friendly way, that doesn't feel like an invasion of space. But when you're doing it when there's contentiousness like this, it can feel like someone is invading your space. So as President Trump shows, I can cross over this boundary right here. That is a power play.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
And you can also see, if you watch Zelensky's eyes, he notices that too.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're...
He looks down at his hand. It makes people uncomfortable when you are in their space.
Going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly what you're doing.
You're in no position.
Now, this is the first time that the defensiveness goes down. I think that Before, Zelensky may have felt that he was in a position of power. He was feeling defensive, but there was some degree of argumentativeness that he felt comfortable with. Now, as President Trump confronted him, you can see the defensiveness broke down because he may be feeling like he is now in a position where he is not in as much power as maybe he felt before that. Watch this change right here.
Telling you,
because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly what you're doing.
You're in
Says, you're in no position to dictate this, and then points at him. And that's when the guard comes down. Because at that point, Zelensky may have realized being defensive in this situation is not helping. When he was confrontational, President Trump came back twice as much. So that position, that type of interaction is not helpful to his position right now.
we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on this
position to
question.
dictate that.
That's exactly
Remember
what
this.
you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
So when he said, you're in no position to dictate, watch Zelensky's eyebrows.
You're in no position to dictate.
Now that's a look of surprise. Now, when we're talking, we naturally put our eyebrows up. As I've said before, that helps people pay attention to our face. Now, what President Trump just said surprised him. That's a look of surprise. The eyes are wide, the eyebrows are up, his mouth isn't open. That's about the only step that it would take to go further as far as a look of shock or surprise would go. But that is a look of absolute surprise right there.
No position to dictate that.
That's exactly
Remember
what you're
this.
doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
You
We're going to feel very
you will
good.
Feel influenced.
We're going to feel
I'm-
very
I'm
good and
telling
very
you,
strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself
very-
to be in a
from
very
the
bad
very
position,
beginning
and he
of the
happens
war.
to be right about
From the
it.
very beginning of the war.
You're not in a
Mr.
good
Brown,
position.
I
You don't have the cards right now.
Now look at how different the body position is now. Now his shoulders are slumped over a bit. I think that some of the confidence is gone. He's not sitting up as straight. Now this feels a little bit different than when someone's leaning in. And it's a very subtle difference. But if you can see his shoulders look a bit more rounded, it doesn't seem that he's leaning and trying to connect. It seems that maybe he feels a little bit more defeated. Also, his hands are being held together. That maybe that he's feeling a little bit more anxious about this interaction.
I'm not playing cards.
Right now, you don't.
I'm very
You're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're
I'm
gambling
the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War
What you're-
III.
what you're
You're
thinking about?
gambling with
What is-
Now, watch the hand signs right here.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling.
Now, if you look at the way that Zelensky is holding his hand right now, he's holding it in a very diplomatic way. You see politicians do this all the time when they're sitting and giving a speech or standing and giving a speech, and they put their hand like that when they speak. It's a way to seem polite because pointing is uncomfortable for people. We don't like being pointed at. So oftentimes when someone's giving a speech, they're advised not to point because it's uncomfortable for the audience. But if you look right here, President Trump wants Zelensky to feel pressure. He is pointing at him, while Zelensky is coming back with a more diplomatic approach. It shows a difference in how they interact.
Gambling with World War III.
what you're
You're
thinking
gambling
about?
with
What you're
World
thinking
War
about?
III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country.
I'm
That's
with
back
all
to
respect to
you.
your
Far
answer.
more than a lot of people said
very
they
respect.
should.
While I would imagine it's quite obvious to most people, if you look at President Trump's brow right now, that's genuine anger. He's genuinely irritated by what's going on right now, and he really is trying to put Zelensky in his place, so to speak. So watch his eyebrow right here.
I'm
That's
with
back
all
to
respect to
you.
your
Far
answer.
more than a lot of people said
very
they
respect.
should
Have
have.
you said thank you once this
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the
Now, what's interesting is that exchange was very tense, but President Trump now seems to be in a relatively calm position. Oftentimes, after an exchange like that, people do things to calm themselves down because there's adrenaline coursing through your veins. You feel agitated, and you don't want to appear agitated, so you do things to calm yourself down. Like right now, Zelensky is touching his hands together. That's a way to calm yourself down. President Trump is steepling again, but we don't typically do that for comfort. We typically do that, as I said, if you're in a position of power. So it's very interesting that he can shift from seeming quite irritated or fired up to going back to baseline pretty quickly.
Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of
you're
America
speaking about.
and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's
can...
not speaking loudly. He's not
Yeah.
speaking loudly. Your country's
Can I-
in big
can-
trouble.
can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No,
Can
you've
I
done a lot
answer?
of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not
I
winning.
know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn
We-
good chance of
we are
coming out
staying-
okay because of
Mr.
us.
President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
Now, it's interesting. Once again, if you look at the body language, if you look at the space Zelensky has a very strict boundary about how far he reaches over.
President, we are staying in
He doesn't reach beyond his own body, if you watch this right here.
our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this
We
cabinet
gave-
alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been-
See, and immediately when President Trump is feeling challenged, he reaches over directly into Zelensky's space. So it's very different, their approach to how they navigate that type of body language.
in this
We
cabinet.
gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid
thank you.
president, $350 billion.
You voted
We gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about West?
If you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me.
equipment,
See, now we're going into something different because there's actual physical touch here. Watch this right
men are
here.
brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
If-
West?
If you didn't have
You
our
invited-
military.
See, there was actually President Trump gently pushed Zelensky. So you can see he's trying to be forceful enough to where he's actually making physical contact. And if you can see Zelensky right now is opening up his hands, it's very similar to when you put your hands up like this, which you can't really see right now. But when you're putting your hands up saying, I give up, so to speak. So at this point, he is trying to back out of this interaction to some extent.
But they had to use our military.
What about West?
If you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me.
equipment.
You invited
If
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over.
Now, I want you to look at the difference in body posture right now. At this point, Zelensky looks like he's probably feeling defeated. Once again, hands are wrung together, his head is down. This is oftentimes a position when you're starting to lose more confidence. So it appears that this interaction is causing him to lose confidence in what's going on right now. It doesn't seem that he feels like he's getting the best of this situation.
Equipment.
You invited
If
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over.
And his gaze is now averted to the ground. And that's definitely something that we do when we're starting to lose more confidence.
In 2 weeks.
In 3
Okay?
days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course,
It's
yes.
going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I
Again,
tell you.
just say thank you.
I said a lot of
accept
times
that there,
thank you
accept
to
that-
American people.
Accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those.
And you can see that President Trump continues to purse his lips in a way that shows disapproval. If you look at this mouth position right here,
Accept that there, accept
to
that-
American
right there, that's a mouth position of disapproval. And that is something that he's actually done at other points that I didn't point out so far.
people.
Accept that there are
And shaking his head no, because he wants you to know how he feels about this.
disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's
I
very
understand.
important. That's
Now, as President Trump said, I want the American people to see this. I believe that that's true. He has his hands very open. His hands are up. He really wants people to see what's going on. So he believes that this process is something that he wants out in the open. I think that that is actually how he feels.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's
I
very
understand.
important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the
I'm
cards.
thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
tell you
You're
again,
running
I
low
know.
on soldiers.
Don't-
Listen,
don't please,
you're running
Mr.
low on
President.
soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then
President.
then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're
I
saying
said-
you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
with guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't
doesn't
with
matter
me.
for you what-
That
what
wasn't
this
with me.
means. It
That was
wasn't
with
with you.
a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person.
This
That
is
was
your,
with,
this
that was
is
with
your president.
Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who
So as he's talking about Biden, as he's getting more confrontational, you could actually physically see President Trump scoot a little bit closer to Zelensky. Because for him, being imposing in this way, making sure that Zelensky feels the intensity of what he's putting out, I think is an important part of this interaction for him. Watch this right here.
that wasn't with me.
It
That was with
wasn't with you.
a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person.
This
That
is
was
your,
with,
this
that was
is
with
your president.
Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama.
See, he physically scooted closer a little bit because he's trying to get into feeling that intensity. He wants him to feel the intensity that he's feeling.
Who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
So we'll go ahead and stop here. It continues, and if there's other aspects of this you want me to analyze, please let me know. Over the course of this interaction, it seemed that President Trump and Vice President Vance continued feeling about the same throughout. Their body positions didn't change much. At times, President Trump got more heated. He got angrier. Zelensky, on the other hand, started out in a position of defensiveness, and over time, he seemed to lose confidence as this interaction went on. I'll be curious where this all goes. I'll be curious if there are more meetings, and if there are, I'd be happy to analyze those if you are interested. If there's anything else you want me to know, please let me know in the comments below. Last thing before we get finished up is I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content